we have Biplab, and he is actually a system architecture, right? Experience at LiveRamp and previously and mostly in AdTech. Feel free to, give a quick intro about yourself, Biplab, because today what I want to cover is AdTech, cookieless world. It's the more meaty stuff. So let's go over to you a little bit of quick intro about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Imran. So currently I'm a senior manager at LiveRamp and overseeing some of the teams, some of the areas like data catalog, segment building, AAA, the access and authentication, data collaboration, which is the interesting part that is happening nowadays with clean room and everything, and activation, some part of the activation. So that's kind of my area of influence right now from the engineering side in LiveRamp. And before that, I was in the connected TV area. I worked for some time there in a company called Conviva. That's a very interesting, a privately held company where I was working as a system architect there for their AdTech part. And before that, I was in a startup called Sinara Systems, and I was the director of engineering there for some time. Then in the later part, I became a principal architect in the company. And so kind of switched between management and the architecture role. I had been doing it for quite some time in my life. And that was also in AdTech. So you're building a DSP, DMP out of SoftBank's data in Japan. And that one we kind of saturated in Japan, that business. And then that company is now sold to SoftBank bought that company. Prior to that, I had a few interesting stints. And before Sinara, I was not in AdTech at all, not in big data, not in AdTech, not in connected TV. Three core areas, kind of my expertise right now. But before, say, 2015, I had an interesting journey. I came to US in 2008, and by that time I had a decent experience in India. I'm working actually from 2002. So, when I came to US in 2008, I had 6 years of experience. The whole thing was in government company, in startups, it ranged from all those, but was in telecommunication. And telecommunication was my passion. My initial everything was in different areas of communication systems. Then same thing I was doing in Qualcomm in 2008. And then I got married, did my master's. And then I had to switch location for me and my wife, both were trying to get co-located. And as part of that, my wife joined Intel in Folsom here. And I also moved eventually from San Diego to Folsom. So I joined Intel in the SSD team there, which was different from communication. But after spending some time there, I moved to Bay Area. And then through my friend and the people I knew who started the startup, so I picked up the leading engineering there in 2015. And that was my entry to the AdTech in 2016, beginning of 2016. And after that, actually, I remember like in few months of being in AdTech, initially I was a bit skeptic at how that will be. I'm coming from communication systems, embedded systems, and those areas to switch completely to the world of big data and real-time systems, clouds, etc. But few months down the line, I was actually fascinated by all the technologies that is being used there. And I'm still fascinated. So there's still the love is pretty much alive on that. Just the being from the engineering side, the passion that I have for building complex technologies gets quite fulfilled in this AdTech area. The technologies that is used to make this thing happen is just amazing. So yeah, since then I had been dabbling in that advertisement, big data, connected TV in this area. And then I was working, actually, when I was working in Conviva, I was trying to build a partnership with Trade Desk and Conviva. And the partnership was actually because Conviva was a very interesting company where it collects that data from the publishers. So they had actual footprint on the publisher's player, which is coming from the startup, which was also in the AdTech. So I knew that how valuable that was for advertising. And when you have like first party data coming up
Yeah.
from the customer's own device and you're like collecting that, you have control over that. You can actually write code which can fetch properties of the users, what is going on there and send it directly, as opposed to you are someone in the back of the line and trying to get those data from third parties from different places. So that was quite valuable, but Conviva was not into AdTech that time. They are primarily into the quality side of the quality analytics, the video quality analytics. And they take the data from the publishers and then creates the dashboards, analytics dashboards, and presents it back to the publisher. So that the publishers can do better analytics of that. And they have pretty strong presence outside the walled gardens in that particular business. Now they were looking at that time that, okay, how they can extend that business to the advertisement as well. Now, of course, there was this, even though from outside it looks pretty good, right? But from the advertisement side, there was serious constraint as well, is that those publishers' data were publishers' own data. So it was contractually that Conviva could not do much globally with that data, right? For example, could not use it for ID building. There are serious restrictions on that for building ID graphs, like global ID graphs or something. So there was quite a bit of restriction as well there. And I joined there as an architect for the AdTech, and I saw some interesting things. I thought it's very interesting, promising area. And then Trade Desk came and they wanted to build a partnership with us. And I led that project from Conviva's side as a whole, also, you can say, for some time. And that was interesting because it was the DSP, Trade Desk being such a big DSP.
Yeah.
But on the connected TV side, they were flying blind. Because they were getting those bid requests on all their thousands of bidders that they have got. But any bid request that comes from connected TV comes almost empty. So they're like, okay, so there is some data, the data that is there, they don't know how much to trust. Because on the video side, you need identifiers. You also need that what content the user is watching. And also you want to know information about that content, like what is the genre and other things. And Conviva was a perfect player to actually kind of mediate that gap between publisher and the brands represented by the DSPs or SSPs also, I'm sure, in the same bucket. But because Conviva had the rich data directly collected from the player, where they had their own footprint there, so they're getting it. Then all their Conviva was playing their own machine learning and other processing to clean up that data. And so the data that was coming out is very rich and good quality data. So it was definitely a gold mine for the DSP and the brand side in general. So that is the project that we were trying, to many DSPs, ad servers, and we worked with ad stitchers as well. And because it was our player, so we modified the player. So I came up with a end-to-end flow of how that will worked, and I got a patent also on that. But eventually that did not go as much as I expected. And the reason was that there were quite a few reasons for that. But one of the things was that, and this was back in 2019, 2019, 2020, just before and right after the pandemic that time. The reason the publishers were hesitant to do that One was their concern that about the data leakage, right? That they were not comfortable working with the DSPs up to that point, because the publishers, they had their own ecosystem, like be it Hulu, Disney, whatever. They had their own ecosystem of advertisement, and they have their tight control over the data. Unlike the other ad tech scenario where you have the like the web pages and the apps, but they don't control the ecosystem, they participate, right? So they try to maximize from the ecosystem as much as they can. And on this connected TV part, the publishers, they have tight control. And also they had concerns over sending the identifiers to the DSPs. And some of the concerns was about, and of course, nobody told that exactly this is their concern. So I'm kind of guessing from that. So might go wrong, but my guess is that they also might have been that they have never worked with the DSP before, so they don't know what they will do with the identifier.
So just to circle back, so basically before what was the name of the company?
Conviva.
Sincara? Sinara.
Mm-hmm.
Before that you were mostly in like non-ad tech space, right? So then you and Sankara, you went much deeper, which is very interesting, like how you got there early days, and now you're LiveRamp, a little bit about your experience, right? Like, so did you choose to be in ad tech at this point, or were you like, there's a big problem to solve in ad tech, and I will tell you where will it lead. It's gonna go to the cookieless world, but we're too early in that conversation right now. Was it that you were choosing, there's a big opportunity that needs to be resolved, that needs to be catered? Or was it like something of your interest that, hey, I like this space just for your, would be interesting to understand.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, much of the big decisions in my life had been quite accidental. And like 4 or 5 of the top most decisions that I made in my life happened to be because I liked something else, or I was extremely curious about that. So one of the things was that I went into modem design, and my master's was actually modem design. And I did completely out of curiosity, because I was very curious to know that how the hell the data that I'm like pressing a button here, that goes to the other side. Now, by that time, I need on work on telecom a lot, so I knew how it happens. Once it comes to the word part, but I did not know how. So this was a kind of a similar thing, that I did not see the problems. I did not analyze the ad tech field in general before jumping into it. I knew it is quite promising and technologically interesting, right? But what happened was that I was fascinated by startups in general. In fact, I came to US to work in startups. That was in 2008. Although it went the other way. It happened that I worked in Qualcomm for 6 years and Intel, etc. But that was because I was settling down here and do all the green card processing, etc. Then I did my master's through Qualcomm, so I had to wait. Then I got married, so I had to. Big company is a good place to settle down, all those. But after that, I was getting hungry. Okay, so the reason I came here is because I saw that I was in Bangalore. I had friends in the startup world there in Bangalore, and I kind of saw their struggles. I actually was helping 2 of my friends with their companies, and I saw their struggles. They're very hardworking, intelligent, honest people, but the startup ecosystem was not that great, say back in 2006, 7. Now I hear that they're better. But that was the time I saw the struggle, so I came here. And that was the reason one of my friend, Nikhil, by the way, you know Nikhil.
Yes.
It was that guy. So he called me to lead the engineering for Sonara. So he was in the product of Sonara. And I talked to Sonara actually before joining Intel. So I talked to their VP, their founder, I knew those people very well, but that time I could not join because I was going to co-locate with my wife in Folsom. So I came back and Nikhil contacted me again, and I thought that's an interesting opportunity, so I joined there. And it was only after I joined I faced the challenges, and it was kind of like day by day I realized, okay, so I made a good decision because there's no doubt the problem here. One of the
Yeah.
problem, great problem, actually was the identity, and the reason identity was a much stronger challenge in Sinara.
Mhm.
And by that time, so I have not faced the outside world of
Mhm.
ed. I was
Yeah.
new to that, and I was trying to get into that. The
Yeah.
situation there was that SoftBank had is one of the largest service providers in Japan, and
Mhm.
they have a large number of Wi-Fi's deployed in various parts of Japan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there they also collect the data, a real-time feed of like which device is going where. Now, of course, they don't know the users and they can link them, but they cannot expose those things. But they were getting device identifiers from a real-time feed of device identifiers from all those Wi-Fi's. And uh, well, so they were also looking that time that, okay, so now that we have all this data, it was a very rich data, the real-time location of the users,
Mhm.
one of the strongest signals in AdTech. But how do we monetize this part? So that is when the startup was formed. But the challenge was that the advertisement happens outside in the public network,
Yeah.
but the identifiers are known in SoftBank's own data center, right, in
Yes.
their private network. Now, how do you link them? So that was a very interesting problem that we solved there. And we did some redirection from the device and
Yeah.
mapping, sending it back information like when the ad is getting displayed at that
Yeah.
time, redirecting it to the SoftBank network, then creating some mapping from there. But again, we could not pick out, of course, any personal information of the user, right?
Mhm.
So that's a strong no-no. But then how do you do that? So we were getting very fuzzy information that is just good enough to target the user, or which is kind of a form of differential privacy, you can say, where you are getting the segments and few other meta information of that user from the network. So that also meant that we actually built the form of DMP there,
Hmm.
which was continuously like profiling these
So
identifiers. Mhm.
just want to add like DMP, just calling out for those who don't know, data management platforms, right? So this
Right.
just yeah. And DSP, when you said DSP, you're talking about the demand side where people like a brand would go and advertise. So
Right.
because I know like some people will be like, what's SSP? So there's the supply side where the publishers come in, they're like, hey, I want to show an ad, So that's supply. You have demand side where people advertise. I'm just oversimplifying it for a 2-year-old. And lastly, then you have the data management platform where you make sense of data, right? So just didn't mean to interrupt, just wanted to add more color. So yeah.
No, actually, I generally give this is a very interesting ecosystem and pretty complex as well.
Yeah.
And I came from telecommunications, so I always try to like equate because the telecommunication is also like that. It's a
Yeah.
complex chain. So from the time you press the call button to the things it goes through and
Yes.
then comes back, it's a chain of things. And
Yeah.
similarly on the ad, when you go to a web page, you click on that.
Yes.
Or say you're watching a video, so you click on the video and boom, a ad comes to you, say before the video. Now the amount of things that happened to make that ad come to you and sometimes say surprise you that maybe you are in the process of buying a new car and
Yeah.
suddenly you see a Honda ad there trying to sell you a brand new Honda car. Now, how did that magic happen? It's quite astounding things that how many players are involved in that. And as you said, like it is broken up into supply and demand. And another ecosystem I draw like similarity with to explain to my family and friends is the house buying ecosystem, the housing ecosystem,
Yeah.
where there's the supply side, where the houses are there,
Yeah.
and but the person who is selling the house, I mean, he is not directly going and door to door and asking people to buy it.
Yes.
There are people who knows how to sell that,
Yes.
and same thing goes for the buyer. The buyer is not going. looking at all the houses and finding out which one you can buy. But there are
Yeah.
people who are experts in the buying system. So that's how like it is divided into two ecosystems. And exactly the same thing happens for advertisement here. That publishers, the ones who have this, who have this valuable, created this valuable resource and drawing the people into that. And now they want to, so that's the supply that we have got. And we have limited supply. And the SSPs are kind of the entities that is representing the selling side. And then on the buyer side, okay, those are the people want to buy those resources.
Yes.
When somebody has come to the website and he has this time slot of say 5 seconds, that's a very premium slot if the show is very good. Now there are hundreds of brands want to put their ad right there. And so they're like competing there with their money and relationships, etc. That's where the DSP comes into play, which is resolving these things and picking up one at the same time, making sure that it distributes it fairly, etc. And the component that is making sure that the right ad is going to the right platform is the DMP.
Yeah.
Who knows the person. Now, person, I have to be very careful when I say person, of course, not person by name and address, but these are identifiers. Those are used, and so that you can serve the relevant ad to the right person.
So just to re-enunciate, like, so your interest basically came up like there is a lot of something in terms of challenges that really interested you to keep going on. Like, hey, so with the challenges, well, let's shift the gear a little bit, right? So you talk about your experience and the interest. One big challenge on everyone's mind this year, I don't have the countdown in front of me, but cookieless. For those who don't know what cookie is and what cookieless world is, because my mom asked me, my dad asked me that, what do you do? I'm like, you see ads, that's me, and then they hate me. So that's one, right? So people don't understand the importance why ads were using cookie in the first place. Is it a real cookie, or is this better for a cookie? It's very interesting. My niece asked me that. "Well, what's a cookie?" And so, if you can add more color, what a cookie is, like you would, because you have technical expertise that you can break it down for a average person, right? So like what a cookie is, what does the cookieless world means in this case, and then talking about the challenges in that space. So we can break it down, So let's talk about what a cookie is and what does a cookieless world is.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting area. Now, what is a cookie, right? So the cookie is a way for the publisher who has created some value, which can be a content like news or a video or whatever it is. It is a mechanism for which that when something is displayed, he can drop a unique identifier. He can save it in the browser for, say, whenever it comes on the same device or on the same browser, it can pick it up from there. So that he can identify that some kind of uniqueness for that browser session device. There are different types of cookies for those, but it's a unique identifier that can be dropped there. When next time when you go to play that, you can pick it up from there if it was. So if you are the publisher, again, like the user comes to you again, you will be able to pull it out from there and see that if you saved certain properties there, you can use those. It's kind of a storage. Now that storage gets used in various ways, and one of the way it gets used actually to save identifiers. Now, when you save identifiers, that saved identifier can be pulled as well from there. And the advertising ecosystem actually has found interesting ways to use that cookie to join, for example, your one session with other session. Or when you are doing something on one browser to do something on the other browser or other publisher. There are interesting ways of cookie redirections which are done. It's called cookie syncing process, where it's basically, I compare, say, one thing is that technically what cookie is. which can be seen from the browser side. So, okay, that's a storage where a website can drop something and save something for later usage as well, right? But from the ad tech side, when you see, I see more like, for example, a carbon atom in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
That say all our cells have carbon atoms. And why everything has carbon atoms? It's because carbon atoms work more like a glue. It actually holds, without carbon atoms, our molecular structures will break down. Because it is the one that is holding such long, for example, our DNA, etc. That's such long structures are held by the beautiful property of the carbon atoms. Now, it is, the cookie is more like that. The cookie is helping in the AdTech ecosystem to glue different properties from different places and help you to build a solid property of that user. That you might have watched something on the TV, you might have walked into a certain store, or you might have paid something, some bill somewhere. Now, all these are kept in their own space. But cookie is the one kind of joins them together on from your web experiences. It helps a lot. Now, some of the downsides of the cookie. Now, the good side of the cookie is that it's quite well established, and under the properties are the interactions between the servers are already built in. The AdTech system understands that very well and works around it. So we have very large volume of cookies. So you go to a data marketplace and you want to buy like cookies, you can buy them in bulk. But they suffer from quality.
Yeah.
So for various reasons, there's a serious concern about the quality that you get from the cookies, because cookies expire, and you might be using a cookie which is like no more used anymore, and it might get linked to wrong things in many times. So, and the algorithms those are applied to actually glue the things are also sometimes probabilistic, not exact algorithms. So that leads to the low quality of the cookies itself. So now when the cookie goes away, and of course the whole thing leads to the privacy concerns, right? And that is where it is coming from. Because without your, while it is very good for the ad tech system, but for the person who is there, without his proper knowledge and understanding through some very complex process called cookie syncing and few other mechanisms are there, your identities are got distributed to a number of places, which is very difficult to track. You can track that if you're really passionate about it, right? If you can see the browser, where all it is going, etc. And you can partially track it. You can't track fully from there.
Yes.
But it is effectively out of your hand. So your identity gets effectively out of your hand. And that is where the serious privacy concerns comes from. So it served the industry very well. It had its own lifetime. And when I joined at that point, if somebody would have asked me that, hey, will cookie go away? It could have been very strange to me that how will the AdTech world work in like 2016. Although the attack on cookie was that time happening already. Safari was one of the things which actually dropped that cookie and made it it was 2015 end or 2016. I think it's 2015 sometime when they came up with that they will make their cookies in Safari, they will make their cookies transient. So they will expire very quickly. So I remember that in Sonara, we had to come up with a very creative solution to tackle that scenario, although it was built only for the Safari. But that is when kind of we started seeing that, okay, so this is, people are getting really concerned, and for good reasons. And then came GDPR. And then all the things, the leaks, very highly high profile leaks like the one happened with Cambridge Analytica, etc. That impacted that. And so the cookie, GDPR, then a little softer version of that, which is in California, the CCPA, that happened.
So just want to add color. So GDPR is basically in EU. It's a data regulation that came over protection basically for the consumers, and the same we have CCPA, which is California Consumer protection rights, something around that. So just want to add again, because some audience may not know. And there are definitely others too, right? There's one in India, I know that's coming up. There's one in Brazil. There, and it's popping up in different states as
Yeah.
well. So it became an
And it is going
increasing
to pop up.
concern. Yeah. So
Yeah.
sorry, continue. Just want to add more color there. So yeah.
Yeah. And these are basically where government is getting concerned about the privacy part.
Yeah.
And that is the impact. And now the question that you were asking, okay, so what is the impact on the
Yeah.
AdTech ecosystem, right? I mean, the first thing I can see is that now let's talk of cookie. And for example, one thing can be that, okay, how much of the ecosystem really dependent on cookies, right? So that is a part of the ecosystem that is dependent on cookies. So the connected TV world is not working on cookies at all, because that's based on the devices, etc.
Yes.
On the device, strictly on the device identifiers, and the household IDs are one of the stronger identifiers there. But it is the browser world or the web world which gets mostly impacted by the cookies. And I'll say that it's more like if you just take off the cookie out and you don't do anything else, then the system will fall apart, like without taking any other measure. Because then you are left with your first party data.
Yeah.
But then if your system is not ready on how to work with the first party data, then suddenly, for example, if I'm Target and I have my customers, and I'm talking about a big brand here, right?
Yeah.
Not all of them are big brands. But suppose even if I take the case of Target, so I have my customers, I know quite a bit about that data, but that's not enough. For example, if I'm selling, say, razor from Gillette, now Gillette wants to run some kind of advertisement or for their razors, but I'm making sales here with I'm like selling their Gillette, so I know who are the people who are like buying it and how frequently they're buying it, etc. But Gillette has no way of connecting to my data here. It's just lost. So it is that carbon atom, which is missing in between, connecting them. So now, so the obvious solution is that now you cannot go to the third party to ask the, hey, I want this kind of data. Just give me the data, in bulk. I need some special mechanism to fill up that gap, right? So, and those mechanisms are coming up, and I think they will continue to come up. And so what we will see now is that firstly, the cookie going away, right? Gradually, that will take effect. And secondly, the organizations, I mean, the part of that is that, as you see, that it's not only the regulations, but the companies are taking steps as well. Apple had been taking steps for quite some time. Google started taking steps now. But of course, all of them will be taking steps in a way that benefits them more than anybody else, right? And that leads to the kind of chunk creation in the industry. And if you say that, again, to the carbon thing, that you took the glue out from there, now there will be systems will try to like stick to and get into larger chunks. And all these big companies, they would like those chunks to be built around them. So they would like to control the identifiers as much as possible. And I think that Google's the privacy sandbox, I think, is a good example of that. Now, Apple being a different thing, that they don't really earn any money from the advertising ecosystem, so they take a different approach there. But that's some change we'll see. And then you need tooling, and that is where like companies like LiveRamp comes into play.
Yes.
And Habu, for example, which LiveRamp bought, I thought was a fantastic acquisition. It's one of the things I have been part of. One of the best acquisitions that I had been part of.
Nice.
Because these two, to me, it seems like a match made in heaven, and that's why so much excitement in the industry as well about that acquisition. And it is because that you need the tooling for those things, and one of the toolings is the identity. And one interesting story that when I was joining LiveRamp, when I made the decision to join LiveRamp that time, and that decision I made from my experience with Trade Desk. If you remember that I was telling that, we were struggling a bit to combine Trade Desk with the publishers, because services concerned. And there's a time when LiveRamp contacted me, and this was for the leading the data collaboration group of their
Yeah,
safe haven.
I remember.
Right. The reason I joined, and I remember that Shreyas, who was hiring me that time, told
Yeah.
me data collaboration, and I was like, okay, let me explain what is the problem is.
Mhm.
Oh, 1 second.
No worries, no worries.
Very well. All right.
Yeah. Yes.
So my father-in-law was here, and he was a little concerned that you are, because he was reading about this GDPR, CCPA,
Yeah.
and I was telling him that LiveRamp is in that business of identifier, identity resolution, right? It's
Yeah.
number one, effectively. So he was concerned that so you were joining, but the this identity thing is under attack. So he
Yeah.
was concerned about that. He didn't know, of course, he's not from the world of technology, so he doesn't understand all the things going on there, neither from the AdTech. But so I told him this that suppose in the again on the coming to the housing industry, right?
Yeah.
Uh, that we have got the agents there. Now, suppose government regulations makes it 10 times more difficult to buy houses.
Yes.
That you have to go through like there's this huge chunk of paperwork. Uh, 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 so what is the effect that will happen on the agents
Mhm.
who are the experts on this helping in the house buying and selling thing? So their business will not go down, right? Because people have to buy houses. So it doesn't matter how difficult government makes it. People have to still buy houses.
Yeah.
But people will be more dependent on the experts to solve the problem. So I will be more dependent on the agent that time to do my work. Even now, say some people are buying house their own or selling their own, they won't be able to
Yes.
do that anymore, and they will have much deeper dependency on the people who are more experts on that. So
Yeah.
it was very loose
Yeah.
analogy, roughly
I
applied.
yeah,
Uh,
just to add, like LiveRamp's role is now even before it was 5 times, now it's even 10 times important because LiveRamp has is not about the data, it's the algorithms. They understand how to make sense of these identities, so you can have this resolution. Just wanted to add, like, for the listeners and people who are watching. So
yeah, and that is now, of course, I told him that, I don't know how it will unfold, but I'm
yeah,
joining based on that assumption. And I think so far that has paid off. I will say that because the
yeah,
collaboration part where I looked, and now look where we are. That
yes,
LiveRamp acquired Habu, which is essentially a collaboration platform that is coming
yes,
from the same concerns that the people who are in the customers of the AdTech ecosystem, advertising and marketing ecosystem. So
mhm,
they are now, so they cannot go and buy cookies in bulk because of all those concerns. So now they're getting ready. So partnership is the way to go. I have my own first party data. I trust it. It's a good quality. You have
mhm,
your own first party data. And you and me see that there is a interesting business case. If
mhm,
me and you combine and we create, that you maybe one of us or both of us want to run campaigns,
yeah,
but if you combine the data, then it's very rich. But problem is that who will combine that? So again, we need the glue, and that is
yes.
where LiveRamp comes into play, and that is where you create a clean room there.
So on that note, then, and by the way, this was a good explanation of the cookies and the cookieless world. That people cannot understand, like, who is your user. And Apple is a different subject. Let's touch upon a little bit on Apple. Their new law, or not, I'll call it the law, right? Because now on iOS, you need to show or even get permission to be able to understand the data. From what the last time I remember, you have to give a reasoning, right? So I'll club this question into one, try to. So with that happening with the Apple side, the cookieless world, right? Who are going to be the losers? The reason I'm asking for this question, there were many companies out there which were highly dependent, and there were businesses for solely collecting data, making sense, selling it, right? So who are going to be like, let's focus on the winners. Let's make it even positive. Besides LiveRamp, which is a clear winner because it's making sense, which companies are going to end up being a clear winner, and how companies who are right now having challenges with Apple, or specifically with Apple, are going to be able to win that situation with them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on that, exactly the regulations that Apple did,
Mhm.
but in general, when these kind of things are happening, the winners are always the people who are dealing with first-party data, and a lot of them. So then the problem with first-party data is that you cannot buy it from somewhere, right? So this is something you have to have. So it is the larger companies which has their tons of first-party data already, and
Mhm.
they are in the safest place right
Yeah.
now. And the importance of that is only going to grow. Anybody who is dealing with the third-party data world, and they which were in that process of like trying to make sense of the using the third-party data are at heavy risk now.
Yeah.
Because all their algorithms will fall apart as these identifiers will vanish in no time.
That's fair. And would you say like, let me give you a scenario. I'll try to be as much as make sure I cover up. I'm not picking any company, but let's say there's a company that has a bunch of content. Let's take Netflix for an example. It has around 100, 200 million users, right? Now they're showcasing ads.
Mhm.
Um, do you think companies like those are considered like they are first party, number one, right? But like, would they then end up building their full stack ad tech? Because that's why they partner with Microsoft, right? In that case, that was the announcement from what I remember, right? So,
Okay.
are you gonna say those are like winners? Like you will see more trend like Netflix, a big gaming company, conglomerates, or they're not conglomerates, but they have huge millions, 100 million plus user data that they're gonna end up becoming their own, ecosystem of own and operated ad tech ecosystem, basically.
Yeah, and definitely, right, because they have their own. I mean, Netflix can survive by their own almost because you already have so much of rich data of the customers.
Yeah.
Say their probably their, I mean, definitely say gender and location where that thing is coming from. You by watching the pattern of the content they're consuming,
Yep.
you can make out quite a bit about their other things as well. And it is connected to the family, wonderful thing, right?
Mhm.
So, and it's connected TV, which is already much less dependent on the third party world.
Yes.
Uh, so Netflix kind of companies are at a perfectly good place to spike.
And would you say the same thing would be for, I don't know, Disney,
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, Disney also, I think, will be the same because I don't know actually how much they dependent on third party cookies before.
They
Uh,
they were, right? Like because they had the merchandise sales, they have they're actually heavily
yeah,
because they have this brand, then they have merch, offline stuff, and now they have online
yeah,
services. But
right.
would you say like would that mean that companies like Disney can leverage the data as a whole? Or will there be some kind of a regulations around there which are not gonna allow? Like let's say someone is a Disney Plus users, Disney would not be allowed to leverage their Disney Plus users data across their other different properties. Could that be something that would possibly happen? Like there could be in that case. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, are you asking that can there regulations come
Yeah,
which will normalize these things?
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, that is something of course, I cannot say, but I do see some kind of disruption coming from somewhere
Yeah.
because this happens to the technologies that you have this smooth going for some time, and then it tends to group into bigger companies, and then it is waiting for a disruption. I don't know
Mhm.
what that disruption will be.
Yeah.
Regulations, yeah, it can be from all the ways. Because at some point, definitely the whole fact is happening is the people who have a lot of first party data
Mhm.
are going to benefit from that, or kind of Disney, which has many other channels like Disney's owns
Yeah.
incarnations in many different directions. Uh, and so they are at an unfair advantage. But at what point somebody will notice that, hey, that is not fair, and we need
Yeah.
to make the playing ground level, and
Because
something will come from there.
the reason I'm asking is because Disney it's a conglomerate. just within their entertainment or media content, they have ABC, they have ESPN, they also have Hulu, Disney Plus. It's just about time someone will be like, you're not Netflix. You're not
Yeah.
Netflix. You're across everything, which is good, but also like, are users aware of it? How much are you being? No, this is actually pretty good. Actually, we may have another session because you offloaded a lot of information, which is really helpful. Like where the cookieless world is, where we were, how you started. So just to end up a little bit on a positive note, I would defer to you, but like any forecast or any prediction or trends you want to call out for 2024 that we might see in this specific area? And then lastly, someone like yourself who has come all the way along, right? You came along from a long journey. You have seen a lot of, like you came here, you got the green card, family, you grew, and someone who's watching and wants to get into ad tech, not specifically, but like wants to get into space where you are. Any advice for them? Because I always ask these questions, there could be some takeaway. I did get 2 messages. People liked it for one podcast. So I want to keep continuing doing that. So over to you.
Yeah, on the first part, like the trend, right? Now, the one obvious thing is the introduction of artificial intelligence here in this space.
Mhm.
And the LLMs are making waves. But the part that I have not seen so far, and I'd be interested to see, is that how that takes the whole advertising. This again on a positive note, while all these things, other things are happening, but how that takes our advertising experience to that next level and benefits publishers, brands, retailers, etc. But how that will be used effectively, apart from some very, what I say, rudimentary early things like
Mhm.
developer productivity or using on normal, say, understanding your data and answering in a summarized format. But I'm waiting for something more. This is a very powerful tool. So something more drastic to happen, which might happen in the world of privacy. Some
Yeah.
disruption can come in the world of privacy, which is coming from AI. And the other part is the collaboration frameworks. For example, we are now the clean room is kind of is the de facto name for the
Mhm.
collaboration. That
Yes.
4 or 5 people, retailers, publishers, brands, marketeers, etc., wants to collaborate. Now they create a clean room, go to a platform like Habu or LiveRamp. Well,
Mhm.
both have combined now. So and they collaborate over there. But I think these collaboration frameworks are going to get more complex in the future.
Yeah.
And more, it's like initially they remain generic. Okay, let's say this happens to any technology. They're initially very generic, but once they start getting used, you start seeing frameworks out of that. And I
Mhm.
think similarly on the collaboration space, because as the cookie goes down, the collaboration is going to be heavily, bigger part of the industry's business. And we will start seeing patterns there. And it'll be interesting to see that what kind of solutions companies comes up, which makes those things happen much better. Uh, yeah, I
It-
mean, in the ad tech space, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, this is good. You can complete your
Uh,
thought. I was like, and on the next part of something advice for someone who's, starting their career as well,
yeah,
into,
yeah, it's a very interesting time, and I think this is a disrupting time right now. And for
yeah.
people to, if somebody say wants to start a company, to look at the 3 or 4 years ahead and try to make some kind of predictions how all these impacts are going to play out. Because if you think that Habu was created, I think in that 2017 or 18 in that time frame,
Yeah.
where the
Yes.
attack on the first party, the third party cookies just started. So they kind of predicted that. They started as a CDP, but quickly ventured into that. Okay, so that is going to be the future. And they locked into that. And in a very short period of time, actually, I forgot which year they were founded. I think 2019, probably not before.
Yeah, it was only been like 4 or 5 years
Yeah, I think
since
it's
the founding.
2019 when they
Yeah,
were founded.
yeah.
And quickly say when I joined LiveRamp in 2021, I'm forgetting 2020 or 2021. One of them I joined. At that time, already Habu was being considered as a viable competitor in that space for LiveRamp.
Yeah.
Right. And that was just the company was created. And LiveRamp was known in the industry for quite some time by that time. So that shows that if you can predict the trend or you can get into something, so you can be part of the disruption and hopefully some kind of success will come.
Nice. No, this is helpful, Biplab, but thank you for your time. This was really insightful. I think I should break it down into a much more deeper episode with you because you gave so much like insightful context. So basically you dabble on a lot of big things that a lot of people will just fly off. So that's why I had to interrupt a little bit, but I think it gives a whole landscape of where we are today. What's the future that you're saying is privacy? Is that, we might see some disruption from the AI perspective. People will start building up their own and operated ad tech stack. Basically, that's the trend we're seeing with Netflix and other companies as well. Yeah, no, thank you, Biplab. Really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Really enjoyed talking.